Mhm. Okay. Well, this is, hold on a second.
You, John, maybe
Yep,
I won't highlight, maybe I won't spotlight you with only 6 people here. What do you think?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So we're working our way now through volume 1 of the Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma, going back to the very beginning teachings. And tonight we're discussing the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And I'm going to lead off, and then Barry's going to do Dharma, and I'm going to do the closing chapter on the Sangha. So we're really discussing the 3 basic principles of Buddhism. The Buddha serves as an example of an ordinary person who lived his life, um, and it did it in a spiritual, you might say, way, which doesn't mean removed from worldly affairs, but actually living one's life more effectively and being of service to others, of help to others. The Dharma are the instructions for how we tread the path. Hi, Sarah. And the Sangha is the community of people with whom we tread the path together. All of this is described in a chapter in the book called I think it was chapter 12, the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels, which just talks about these 3 jewels. So the word Buddha, we're going to talk about Buddha first, literally means awakened one, someone who is awoken from the sleep of samsaric, confused perceptions, hassles, dreams, errors. These errors haven't changed over the centuries since the time of the Buddha himself, Shakyamuni, 2,600 years ago. They're the same fundamental aspects of human mind. And he makes the point the Buddha was not a Buddhist. He wasn't imitating anybody else's achievement, but he found the realization within himself. He enlightened himself sitting underneath the Bodhi tree. No one else did it for him. So we are not yet Buddha, awakened, but we have that potential, perhaps not yet the realization. And yet, Buddha is what we are at core. Buddhism teaches this, that we have simply, you might say, lost confidence in our lives and feel that we are less than, when in fact, we already are awakened, enlightened, and Buddha. So you could put effort, he says, into sitting practice, and you should realize that there is tremendous love and affection coming from the lineage. The adoration and love of a teacher, which is the lineage, for a practicing student is limitless and always tender, he says. So the Tibetan term for Buddha is Sangye. Sang means clarified or purified, and Ge means expansion, which is connected with Vipassana meditation, opening our minds, not being lost in repetitive dreams. Altogether, Buddha or Sangye means being awakened and then expanding your vision at the same time you are helping others. You're becoming cleared of any neurosis. The fundamental problem is that or mistakes, there are 2 fundamental mistakes that we've made. These are called the 2 veils, which are going to come up throughout the teachings. The first veil is the veil of conflicting emotions. That is, that we're caught up in all kinds of emotional situations, anger, jealousy, pride, lust, And these emotions roil and disturb our minds and make us unhappy. The second veil is called the veil of the Jnana Avarana. It's the veil of primitive beliefs about reality is one of them. As we come to the path, we very much believe that I exist and other exists. What it means to exist is worth thinking about. There are three main qualities that attach to existence. The first is endurance through time, as though something remains unchanged through moments of time. And what Buddhism teaches is that nothing remains unchanged through moments of time. Everything is constantly changing. It's never what it was the instant before. This gesture comes and goes. These words come out of this mouth. This person ages imperceptibly. But even one version of this is the truth of impermanence, is that we're all dying. We're all aging. Our cells are dying off and our bodies are growing old, and the desk that you're sitting in is wearing out. And that's sort of a long-term version of impermanence and non-existence of anything permanently. But the other version is that in our experience, moment to moment, right now, nothing stays the same even for an instant. What you're looking at is gone in an instant. What you're hearing, these words pass away in an instant. Everything is a constant fluxing. And so the first idea of non-existence of self, the non-existence of self, is that nothing endures over time. It's just a constant changing. And yet we think that there are things that endure. We think that I endure. And yet I is just a constantly shifting awareness. We think about me and my body, me and my emotions, me and my environment, me and the desk, me and you, and it's all constantly changing. And yet we think there's some fundamental core that doesn't change. And this is in relationship to fundamental things out there that don't change. And yet everything in our experience is constantly changing and shifting. But we constantly think that there are things in our experience, everything endures. The second quality of existence, which is denied, is that things exist independently. That is, that they have an independent existence, when in fact, what we experience in the moment is a constant arising and passing away of everything, interlocked, interconnected. These words are dependent on the silence in your ears and this voice and this body, and it's a constant matrix, a shifting matrix. So everything arises and passes away interdependently. Nothing has any independent being. And the third thing is that quality of existence which is denied is that things are unitary, one thing, when in fact everything is made up of an infinite number of parts, all the way down to atoms and atoms, to electrons and positrons, and then to quarks, and then to a constant flow of time. So what Buddhism is teaching is that this world that we think has true existence, in fact, doesn't. But when we think that it does, we're in constant relationship with it. And these relationships between I and other, which are just mental creations, I and other, these relationships have three modalities. You can want to draw closer to this imaginary other because you think that it's going to be good for you in one way or another. You can want to push apart because you think that the other is inimical to your well-being. That's aggression. The first is passion, pulling it towards you. Second is aggression, pushing it away. The third is indifference. You stay the same distance because you just don't see the thing as being for or against you. And so we get lost in this suffering of constant push-pull, constant emotional turmoil, and false beliefs about reality which are constantly being denied, constantly being undercut. Sangha, the word Sangha means awakened and expanding. You're awakened to what? To the true nature of reality, that this is a constantly shifting, ever-changing presentation that we sit in the midst of. It's the fruition, Sangha is the fruition of wakefulness, the Buddha. It comes automatically from sitting practice, in which you overcome mental events of all kinds. And that's called San, and experience the openness, Ye, Buddha. You're no longer trapped, but are opening up the spirit of the Buddha. So this is really a matter of opening up to the beauty and the constant changing presentation of life. It's connected with the six senses. We use the senses as they are, as sensing machines, as vehicles for mindfulness. So we become aware of that visual object, that sound, that smell, the taste, the tactile sensation, whatever it may be. But you're not caught by them. That's meditation, is that your mind is open, awake, fluid, not one pointedly fixated. And then in the sutra, the sutra lays out the names for the Buddha. The first is Bhagavat. Bhagavat in Tibetan is Chomdende. And it means, Chom means conquering the four evil ones. We'll come back to that. De means gone beyond holding on to any kind of fixation. Den means possessing, and Pir, the power of wakefulness. The four maras that you're going beyond as a Bhagavat, these came to the Buddha during the night when he was meditating under the peepal tree, which is later called the Bodhi tree, and achieving enlightenment. And they came to seduce him, these four maras. The first is what's called the Devaputra Mara, which is the son of the gods. And this refers to the personal gratification of pleasure, searching for pleasure all the time. This distracts us from reality. The second of the maras, the tempters, is the Klesha Mara, thought patterns and daydreams that can become evil, demons, entertainment through passion, aggression, pride, jealousy. And it's entertainment because it keeps this false sense of I alive, gives I something to do. I love, I hate, I fear, I. And we get caught in a constant ongoing story, like a television drama, like a play, like a movie, in which I is the hero or the heroine, and we tell ourselves or we live this story. This is Klesha Mara, and it's very upsetting. This third one is Skanda Mara, and this is really the belief in an I am, and all the things that constitute I, my body, my mind, my emotions, my thoughts, in spite of the fact that these all come and go in the moment. And the final Mara is the fear of death, Yama Mara. And then another epithet for the Buddha is Tathagata. Gata means gone. Tata means like that, or thus gone. So this refers to the fact that the Buddha has left the world of error and has gone on to the world of enlightenment, thus gone. It says, there were hundreds and thousands of Buddhas before Shakyamuni. At the same time, they appear only rarely. The next epithet for the Buddha is Arhat. And Arhat is the name for the Hinayana practitioner who achieves understanding, especially understanding of egolessness. It means, the word literally means in Tibetan, the conqueror of the enemy being misunderstanding. And Pa makes it a noun. So one who conquers the enemy, the four Maras and everything else that are enemies to our enlightenment. It means being free from credentials, he says, even the credential of enlightenment. This is all about learning how to live one's life much more fully, not trapped in the hopes and fears of our imagination, but coming present and behaving in a way that is sane, accurate, open-hearted, and with appreciation for our lives. The last one that he talks about is Sambuddha, which simply means perfect Buddha. Sambuddha. Sam is perfect. So someone that has attained real Buddhahood, genuine Buddhahood, beyond the two levels of ego, of self and other, believing in self and other. See, as long as we live in this world of self and other, we're constantly finding these problematic relationships between this imaginary I that we cook up in the moment and this imaginary other. That doesn't mean we don't have to pay the bills. Of course we do. It's the dramas that live in our minds that we repeat over and over again. And really, the hallmark and the giveaway, the telltale, you might say, is the repetition. The fact that they repeat over and over again with slight variations each time. We tell ourselves the same unhappy stories. So, and their epithets for the Buddha, the learned and virtuous one. Learned refers to those who have insight, in particular the insight of shamatha vipassana, which is the insight that goes beyond these conceptual, repetitive, fraught stories that we tell ourselves. In Tibetan, it's Rikpa Denpa. Rikpa is insight, Denpa is the holder of it. Rikpa is the intelligence of the Buddha. It's the clear seeing beyond labels, beyond the stories that we tell ourselves. So the Buddha, in the Sutra of the Recollection of the Three Noble Jewels, refers to the Buddha as Shapsu Denpa, one who possesses feet. Denpa means the possessor of, and Shapsu is feet, meaning one who is able to walk the path. And then they talk about the Buddha, or a Buddha, as having the 8 superior ways of seeing. These are the 8 limbs of Vipassana. And they're the same as the 8 categories of the Noble Eightfold Path, which you might have studied in other places. And he enumerates them. The first one is the view, 8 ways of seeing. Insight and clear perception, beyond preconception, beyond labels, thoughts, which always freeze our mind and make us stick. And those thoughts are always good, bad, better, worse, good for me, bad for me. All kinds of things like that. And he says, view means seeing and realizing things as they are. And it's called Yangdak Bedawa. Dawa means view, and Yangpak means pure, and Pei is a particle that indicates that what went before modifies what went behind. So it's Yangdak Bedawa, utterly pure view. This is the first of the 8 qualities of Vipassana and of the Buddha. He says, after you realize the view, you see and walk the path. And these are the remaining 7 stages. The second is understanding. Yangdak pe dokpa. Yangdak again means pure or perfect. And dokpa means understanding. So you develop a completely pure understanding. Beyond concept. You're just seeing things as they are. The third is pure speech. Yangdak pe nak. Nak is also the word that's used for mantra. Utterly pure speech, proclaiming and uttering according to dharmic principles of peace and non-aggression. Number 4 is the end of karma. Yangdakpe lekita. Le means karma, action. And ta is the ending of. So lekita means the ending of karma. Utterly pure. When you become a Buddha, you stop creating karma because there's no sense of I and other anymore. There's only completely accurate, pure action, upaya. And so we stop creating karma. Until we achieve Buddhahood, we're constantly creating karma through our aggression, our passion, all kinds of things. We provoke reactions and then have to suffer them, endure them, experience them. Number 5 is livelihood, which means not harming others, not causing chaos to others, but simply living, being. The 6th is pure effort, and effort means constantly appropriate action, appropriate in the moment, whether it's paying bills, whether it's helping someone out of a ditch, whether it's whatever it may be, going to the doctor to take care of your body, because we need a good body to tread this path, whatever it may be. So Yangdak, and then pure effort, talked about pure recollection, Trenpa, means that you remember who and what and where you are and what you need to do. This isn't driven by anxiety and thought, but by appropriateness. We all need to have a functioning human body and a functioning situation, livelihood, home, food, in order to tread the path, in order to live a good life, in order to be of service to others and ourselves. And the last is meditation, completely pure meditation, Tingzin. Yangdakpe Tingzin. Tingzin is the Tibetan. It's usually translated into Sanskrit as dhyana, translated into English variously, but perhaps as meditation. And this comes from the shamatha vipassana experience that we are all practicing. So the basic point is that the Buddha actually experienced all 8 ways of seeing. He worked on himself, never relying on others' neurosis, pain, or negativity. We do similarly. And this is why we call ourselves, he says, non-theists. We're not looking for an external authority to validate us. We're exploring our own experience, our own intelligence, our own heart. We're not subscribing to any dogma. And the text says it was his experience of shamatha vipassana, which is the awareness that cuts through any kind of dogma, any kind of belief, into pure intelligence, knowing what to do in the moment. And it was this that made him special and which we appreciate. He discovered shamatha vipassana. So he's known as the learned and virtuous one. And he's also called the Sugata. This is another epithet for the Buddha. Gata means gone, and Suga is joy. So gone beyond or gone to joy. And the joy is the joy of freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from hatred, freedom from anxiety, freedom from self-concern, freedom from error, and the constant ability to take care of oneself appropriately. And there are many other epithets mentioned in the sutra, such as charioteer, who leads you in the direction of enlightenment, the knower of the world, the king of the noble ones. So finally, in the last part of this sutra, it talks about him being the Tathagata. He's in accord with all merit. Merit is richness. It's not something you work hard to get. It's not sort of being goody-goody. He said it's like digging in the earth and finding gold dust in your hand. Merit has to do with discovering the beauty and the richness of life, this joy, that there's love, there's intelligence. There can be a tremendous appreciation. When we're lost in suffering, we can barely see beyond our eyeballs. It could be a beautiful day and we don't notice it because we're so concerned with this. But merit here means the ability to appreciate the extraordinary beauty and tenderness, which includes pain, of life. He doesn't waste the roots of virtue, saying the same thing again. He does what's appropriate. He is completely ornamented with all patience. If you're a teacher, when a student raises a question impatiently, you have to be patient and work with that student, he says. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. These 12, is it 12? Yes, 12 aspects. His body is so beautiful, tranquil, bears witness to his awareness. One never has enough of seeing him. It is unrequited love. Now, I'm realizing that all of this is in the male pronoun. It could just as easily be in the female pronoun. So she is not stained by the realm of desire. She is not stained by the realm of form. She is not stained by the formless realm. The Buddha is not in any of these realms, just being him or herself at best. These three realms, the realm of desire, form, and formless, are the three modalities of samsara, of confusion. We as human beings live in the desire realm. We live in the human realm, which is one of the 6 realms of the realm of desire, the kama dhatu. Kama means desire. Then there are 2 more realms, which are purely, you might say, mental states that can be achieved through concentration. And they have to do with removal from the world, because we fall into these kind of trance states. This is the realm of form and the realm of pure form, where one goes into almost a trance. You meditate one-pointedly on an object. And these are all within the realm of confusion and samsara, all 3 of them. Although the form and formless realms can be very pleasurable for a while, until they, like all created things, wear out. He's completely liberated from suffering, free from all the kleshas. These are the torments of the I, other, mistake. He still has physical pain, but he is beyond complaint. Just accepts it. It's what he has to work with. The Buddha is completely liberated from suffering, free from all the kleshas. Oh, I've already read that. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. The skandhas here refers to this false belief in I. We're constantly living in this movie, this story, in which I is the hero. I. And in fact, in pure awareness, there's just this, without that I, other. drama. The dhatus have no hold on him. His ayatanas are controlled. And what it's saying is that the Buddha is not seduced by the senses. The dhatus and the ayatanas, we'll get into it another time, but basically they represent the senses, with the eye and the object of the eye, the ear and sound, the nose and smell, and then the mind that perceives them. He's completely cut the knots, free from bondage and neurosis, and he's liberated from extreme torment, the mental torment of hatred, unhappiness, wishing things were otherwise. That's the fundamental torment. He says, this is interesting, once you attain knowledge, understanding, the experience of shamatha vipassana, you're free from tormenting yourself. You don't have to beat yourself up anymore. So while you experience pain more vividly, because your mind is right here in the present moment, not distracted, you do so without the complaint, which would magnify that pain. When we complain about our pain, it gets worse, and the Buddha just sees it. He's liberated from craving. He's crossed over the turbulent river, the confused river of samsara, in which we're always wanting something more. And he doesn't abide in nirvana, in some kind of, otherworldly heaven. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings. He dwells on the level or bhumi that is free from all bondage, pain, and hang-ups. But he does not dwell in peace for his own benefit alone. He is working with all sentient beings. And then Khyentse Rinpoche says something that I find very provocative. He says, in fact, he is still with us. And I think that what that means is that our intelligence, awakening intelligence, is Buddha. All these are the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavat. He does not proclaim his virtues or superiority. We just see it, just as we see the virtues of gold or diamonds, which do not self-proclaim. It's a wonderful analogy, I think. So I'll stop there. Barry, should we have a discussion, or should we just go straight into the second chapter? What does everybody think?
Let's maybe if anyone has any questions or comments, I think that'd be good.
Complaints?
Yeah. Insults? No?
I think above all that the Buddha represents someone who is an example of someone who achieved sanity. And in doing so, achieves freedom from neurotic suffering of samsara. Cuts the two veils. The first veil is the suffering of emotional turmoil, and the second veil is the suffering of false beliefs about the way the world works and living in that world, that false world. Well, Barry, why don't you do the Dharma?
Okay. The Dharma. Having discussed the qualities of the Dharma, he says, the Sutra of Recollection of the, I'm tongue-tied. The Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels goes on to present the qualities of the Holy Dharma. Dharma means teachings, it means truth, law, or path. Simple enough, but the Sutra of the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels refers to something that goes far beyond that. in the Dharma. To begin with, the Dharma is dynamic, and he goes into this by introducing the term Dharma chakra, which he says means the constant revolving, constant motion of the Dharma. And Dharma chakra, actually, if you look it up, which I did, what you'll find is the symbol, the wheel that uses the symbol of Buddhism and represents the teachings of the Buddha. That the Four Noble Truths, for instance, are referred to as the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. And the implication is that it's not static, that the Dharma evolves through time. And this is because they're the teachings of the Buddha, and the Buddha was a person, not a god. And his teachings were never meant to be inscribed in stone and frozen for eternity at all. As a matter of fact, during the time of the Buddha and for the first couple hundred years afterwards, they were learned strictly through oral tradition. And different people interpreted them differently, and eventually all of this led to a fracturing of the skanda into the 18 schools. It's a period of time. So this means that the Dharma is pointing the way, and it changes over time and in different circumstances. Chogyam Trungpa brought his own particular understandings and teachings to his presentation of the Dharma, which is what we're receiving now. And of course, for each of us, we're finding our own truth in them. It's not something to memorize, right? It's all about telling us how we can begin to experience what the Buddha did. You might say, to walk the path of the Buddha or walk with the Buddha. The practitioner and the Dharma should be walking together side by side. That is the idea of Dharma chakra. And that has to do with finding the truth within us, that only by engaging beyond intellectual understanding, finding the truth of the teachings in our own lived experience through contemplation and meditation, that's the true Dharma. He says Dharma chakra is a driving force that inspires us and makes us spiritually ambitious. Well, I'm just going to leave that one there, but I'm honestly not sure what that phrase means, but in any case, it is that which destroys the anti-dharma or adharma, the psychological approach of sheer indulgence and entertainment without any sense of journey or accomplishment. That also, often we would like to perpetuate our indulgence, he says, our aggression, passion, intellectual speculation. And although this can be painful, we get some kind of pleasure out of it. And this is the nature of samsara, that we all come to this with. We have our habitual patterns of thoughts and behavior, the way we see things. And even though we may be dissatisfied with it, we may understand that, we need to change that. Still, there's a kind of familiarity and kind of comfort of that. It's the painful pleasure of samsara. And also, we can feel like we're accomplishing something sometimes by, speculations of different kinds. Now, the Dharma should inspire us and protect us from the useless indulgence that has nothing to do with the path. The meaning of Dharmachakra is that the Dharma is used primarily with a good state of mind. And so intention matters. The way that you receive these teachings and engage with them makes a difference. That the Dharma, excuse me, I lost my place here. Yes, okay. The Buddha, he says, is like a charioteer who knows the way. And this was, I believe, one of the epithets of the Buddha just now. The path is the Dharma, the rider is your companionship with the Buddha, and the chariot is your meditation cushion. Now, he goes on to say, in order to realize the true meaning of the Dharma, you have to understand your mind, our state of being. How, you may ask? Meditation. That, of course, meditation with open eyes and an open heart, open to everything, rejecting nothing. So by remaining present to whatever is arising in this ever-changing moments of our awareness, to the extent that you do this, you can begin to see what's going on, start to understand the mind or state of being. And actually, this is an act of bravery and of generosity and compassion for ourselves. We begin to know ourselves in an entirely different way that is actually profound. Understanding the Dharma is connected with shamatha vipassana. In shamatha vipassana, when a thought or breath occurs, we pay attention to that one thing or breath. We take care, step by step, to be there right on the spot. And he goes on, the Dharma is based on honesty, on not having self-deception of any kind. So this is also about being on the spot, direct, simple, not indulging in speculation. But he says the difference is that, in other words, let me back up a step. Dharma can have several meanings. That, of course, it can be on the level of things as they are, of understanding of very worldly stuff. But he says the difference is that Dharma is the truth of reality of the journey towards freedom. This is about taking inspiration from the Buddha and knowing, starting to understand that that may be possible for us. And here's the Dharma. It points the way. So when the Dharma speaks about reality, he says, we see that it is worth stepping out of our little world, our habitual patterns, our little nest. And this is like what I was saying before about the comfort that can be there in the midst of the pain and suffering of samsara. So in that way, the Dharma brings greater vision. And this is one of the attributes of Dharma in the Sutra. Even though we may think we cannot understand the Dharma, it still brings greater vision. And it's worth remembering, too, that we may not understand a lot of this, but as long as our intention is a good one, then we can just continue. And then he goes on here, and in a paragraph, he kind of quickly goes through a lot of the attributes that are listed, and I'm not going to try to expand on most of those. The Holy Dharma is good at the beginning if you join with it properly. It is good in the middle because you are on the path, he says, and it is good at the end because it frees you from the pain and torment. He goes on, the meaning of Dharma is clear and definite, and its words are excellent. That's another thing from the sutra, and well spoken. It is not mixed up with ideas or borrowed concepts, so it is pure. Like good water, he says. By bringing an understanding of relief and freedom from pain, the Dharma directs one further and fulfills one's purpose. And finally, the Dharma puts an end to the journey. And as he says, the journey between oneself and others, which is samsaric. And the Dharma puts an end to that journey by cutting through confusion, by cutting through this persistent belief in the existence of I and other, as John was just talking about. And it is by cutting through that brings one to fulfillment, fulfills one purpose. Now, the brilliance and this is an important point he's getting to here. So, the brilliance and magnificence of the Dharma is so great, it can seem to be too much. But I myself gave in at the age of 13. And so, what does that mean, that he gave in? Well, there can be a tendency to feel that this stuff is out of reach, that it's beyond me, that I'll never be able to understand this. And that all of this is self-doubt. And it's all comes from poverty mentality. And the sense of not having what it takes, the sense of poverty, has to be given up. And that is what he's talking about when he says, I myself gave in at the age of 13. He gave in to the teachings in a wholehearted way. He's stopped keeping the teachings at arm's length with self-doubt, thinking this stuff doesn't really apply to me. And as long as you are saying that kind of thing to yourself, there's a poverty, there's a need, a hunger, a thirst. And he goes on to say that the sense of poverty has to be given up. Once you do that, your thirst is quenched, and the way to proceed further becomes very natural and ordinary. So this is when the teachings begin to really come alive. Up till then, the teachings can be interesting, helpful, lead to better understandings, but beginning to really experience the teachings comes with giving up that self-doubt. Begin to realize your own Buddha nature, developing confidence in that. And that is a profound change. He says, we could say quite simply that the first thought of human beings is Dharma, the second thought is Dharma, the third thought is Dharma, and first thought occurs before the watcher has a chance to wake up and jump in between you and your experience, It's the direct experience of something on the dot. Okay, finally, I think, how much? What do we have here? Okay. Well, finally, he says, the moment you wake up, the moment you open your eyes and see a ray of sunshine or hear your parents talking, those first perceptions are direct, innocent, and pure. They are the working basis that happens over and over up to this very point. That quality of first thought is happening here and now. It is happening all over the place, he says. So, on to Sangha.
Anyone have anything they would like to say? Okay, Sangha starts out by saying that if you've taken refuge vows, you are regarded as a member of the Sangha. How many people here have taken refuge vows? I know Kyle's about to. Sarah? Okay. And Vicky.
Yeah. And Darlin.
And if anybody feels inspired to take refuge vows, let me know and we'll schedule something. We've had one request. One person here, actually. And we'll probably do it soon. For however many people, it doesn't really matter. Taking refuge vows is, if you walk down the street in Bangkok and you run into a monk or a nun, you can request refuge vows and they'll probably take you and give them to you right on the spot. We take it a little more seriously. Trungpa Rinpoche emphasized it. So if you've taken refuge vows, then you're regarded as definitely as a member of the Sangha. And even if you haven't taken refuge vows, if you are experiencing benefit from involvement with the Sangha, and of one kind or another, it might be simple friendship, it might be the understanding of one's life, then we begin to become members of the Sangha. The Sangha is the group of people who travel together on this path, help each other on this path, who don't rely on each other, don't lean on each other, so that if one person falls down, nobody else collapses because they were leaning on them, but rather the person next to them can reach down and help them up. So we walk alone together in the Sangha. There are 10 conditions that are arranged in 3 categories. 3 categories are entering properly, entering the Sangha properly, being worthy of veneration, and receiving generosity. I'll just go through them. The first 4, entering properly, are connected with relating with oneself, and how one enters into Buddhism and the Sangha. The next 2, of being worthy of veneration, have to do with how members behave in order to be worthy of giving and receiving respect among each other. And the last 4 about the relationship between the Sangha and people outside the Sangha, how the Sangha becomes worthy of receiving respect and generosity by being worthwhile and disciplined. Now you remember, this is the Hinayana stage of the path. And when the Buddha first taught, in fact, throughout his life, Buddhism was largely a matter of Sangha. It was monastic, monks and nuns. There was very little lay Buddhism during the Buddha's life. That happened later in India, lay Buddhism. And of course, it's the main phenomena here in the United States. There are many more lay Buddhists than there are monastics, religious. Trungpa Rinpoche at one point said about the difference between lay and I'm calling it monastic, it includes men and women, that being a layperson, if you can actually practice your meditation and study in the midst of a ordinary life, the path, that's a faster path. The easier path is the path of becoming a monastic, simplifying your life, wearing robes, eating vegetarian, making your life conform to the precepts, the rules of the Vinaya, the rules of discipline. It's an easier path, but it's actually slower, he said, because, and it's the reason that the other path, the path of a layperson, is faster and more difficult, is that we're confronting all of the temptations and anxieties of our lives much more directly. And these can be very, very distracting and keep us off the path and slow us down if we don't bring awareness to them. So, entering properly. This has to do connecting with and relating with oneself, entering into sanghaship. And it consists of 4 of these 10 points. The first is that the person enters the sangha completely, without reservation, not holding back, not holding on to ego, not holding on to theistic philosophy. He keeps emphasizing that. See, when you hold on to theistic philosophy, you're looking for an external savior. And in Buddhism, there is no external savior. It's all about this, working with oneself. He says, if you're non-theistic, you do not enter into anything other than the Sangha, therefore you enter completely. Any theistic way of saving yourself is out of the question. It also has the sense of entering gracefully or beautifully into discipline, meditation, and prajna, which is clear seeing. First, you make up your mind perfectly and completely, and then you get in. There's no hesitation. So you enter gracefully into Shila, that's the discipline. That means like we sit together and other things. Samadhi, which is we meditate. And then prajna, we begin to see the world clearly beyond the hopes and fears, hope beyond good and bad, all of which is the province of ego. The second one is they enter insightfully with rikpa. Rikpa is clear seeing, same thing again. Especially with genuine appreciation for these teachings and becoming like Buddha through meditation. You begin to understand how these things, you find how these things apply to you and are true for you. And if they're not, then reject them. You begin to feel that your sitting practice and your approach to the rest of your life are in accordance with the Buddha, the Dharma, and the message of the Four Noble Truths. You begin to feel these teachings are relevant. They make sense. And that's why you take refuge. Taking refuge is making a commitment to work on these ideas more deeply, as deeply as you can with yourself. He says the pain of samsara is diminished and you enter into the possibility of nirvana, which is something actually that in later stages we throw out. The third one is entering straightforwardly. That is, you don't tell lies, you don't make nice, you are straightforward, without dishonesty, genuine, free from negativity and free from exuberance, both of which are extremes. We're not attacking others, but we're including everyone who wishes to be included. There's no issue of whether others believe or not. Buddhism doesn't entertain beliefs. It recommends against beliefs of any kind. Words are just useful ways to take things. useful for particular people at particular times and places, and this especially applies to the Buddhist teachings. Entering harmoniously, the sense of friendship and kindness towards everyone, especially our Dharma brothers and sisters. He said it's possible because you're trained in shamatha vipassana, so your body and mind are harmoniously synchronized. When we come into awareness here, body and mind are in sync. There's not a separate issue. And then the second main point is being worthy of veneration. And there are 2 points here. This is the Sangha is worthy of being venerated because the members have become elegant, insightful, straightforward, friendly. How about those 4 adjectives? Elegant. Elegant, how elegant in their simplicity. Insightful, beginning to see through the myths that we believe about our lives. Straightforward and friendly. And for them, it becomes possible to relate that way to others. You're not on an ego trip, not trying to become a great hero or great leader before you even understand the Dharma. So you look at your fellows as being worthy of veneration with joined palms. The joined palms is the Indian expression namaste. I honor you. Respect. And you bow. Your bowing is a gesture of mindfulness, devotion, genuine longing, and respect. You're also worthy to receive someone else's bow, not because you're a saint, but just because you're friendly and sane. And then he puts in, or aspiring to it. You're willing to work for the benefit of others. Yeah, and this relates to the genuineness with which you can address others in the bow, when we bow in at the beginning of a session. And when you meet a real teacher, especially a Tibetan who's immersed in the tradition, if you go in for a meeting with that teacher or you have a personal one-on-one with that teacher, even in the middle of a crowd, you might prostrate to them, get down on your knees and touch your head to the ground as a gesture of this cultural respect, this cultural style of exhibiting respect. And that's the second point. They are worthy of receiving prostration. Bowing is communicating your openness psychologically. You open yourself completely. Though physically you do not. I study with a very traditional Tibetan Khenpo Nandro, and on occasion I have had personal, interviews with him, private. And when I enter the room, first thing I do is bow down 3 times to the floor and then sit. And it feels really good, actually. He's sitting there smiling, and we're just in agreement, the 2 of us. It's friendly. He says, prostrating is completely giving. You do not prostrate for somebody, and you do not bow for somebody. In both, you're not conning the other. You're not trying to win them over. You're not conning anyone, but you're expressing your psychological beauty. And the other person to whom you're prostrating appreciates that. It's understood. He says, those who bow and those who are bowed to are both cutting through their own trips and just coming present in simplicity. The third category of the Sangha is receiving generosity. The Sangha is a field of merit, of openness, of sanity, increasing sanity and kindness. This is if you're kind and friendly with somebody, they in turn will be kind and friendly to you. A field of genuine friendliness will be created. This is the third category. They are a field of glorious merit. The second category, there are 4 here, is they are the Sangha completely capable of receiving all gifts. The Sangha is worthy of being supported. Now he's talking about the community of monks or nuns. Money given is never wasted because they are sane and their conduct is pure. So lay people support the Sangha. And because that Sangha has practiced generosity, it is worthy to receive it. The Sangha is continually practicing generosity of one kind or another. They're an object of generosity because they express and spread the most basic sanity. So giving to the Sangha is an attempt to shift the world towards sanity. And they're always a great object of generosity. That's the fourth. He says, the reason is that the Sangha does not court generosity like fundraisers do. There's no barter mentality. You know, if you're a fundraiser and somebody's going to give you a lot of money, you're going to give them something back, probably, you know, recognition at the very least, maybe a gold pin. Who knows what you're going to get? All kinds of things. And that just doesn't happen here. There's no barter mentality. If people want to give, they should give. If they don't want to give, they shouldn't give. If you are fundraising in a dharmic way, you do not con people, he says. You try to ignite their intelligence and relate with them very genuinely and faithfully. So the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, he says, the Buddha is the example you follow. The principle is like learning how to drive a car. You've got your driving teacher, you're sitting in one of those cars that says student driver, right? Remember those? And you've got your driving teacher, that's the Buddha. He's teaching you how to drive. The Dharma is the path you tread. It's like the road or like the fuel that's driving your car forward. And the Sangha is the community of practitioners making the same journey. That's the driving. He says if you drive too fast, you might get a ticket and be out of the Sangha. So you have to behave appropriately. And that's it. I'm going to stop. So we have the Buddha. There's really an example and an instructor. That's what the Buddha represents. The Buddha teaches us. We're getting it right now with this book, instruction, and we're grateful to that Buddha. And the Buddha is an example as well. We can see that person. And the Dharma are the actual instructions that he or she gives. And the Sangha is what is it? Is it the car? Did he say it? Was it the car that we ride in? The vehicle? The fellow practitioners that we're friends with as we travel this path? So we can have a discussion.
I just couldn't help but think about my driver's ed teacher writing in my annual, good luck with driving because you're going to need it.
Is that what the person said to you? Oh my God.
He wrote it in my annual.
Oh, geez. So how's your driving?
It's fine. It's fine. I haven't had a wreck. I shouldn't even say that, knock on wood.
I've
I'm
had
not
some.
sure how that metaphor works for Buddha.
We've all had so many wrecks in our lives, don't you think?
True, yes.
As we travel this path. Yeah, thank you.
Mm.
Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for the teaching, John and Barry. My question is it necessary to have a teacher in order to have a Sangha?
Yes. Buddha principle. That
Yeah.
can take different forms. In our case, I think it's the lineage coming through and guiding us. It would be better if we had someone like Trump Rinpoche here, to say the least. But we do what we can. We follow our inspiration. And if the inspiration wanes, you have to respect that.
I think all the teachers of this Sangha are impeccable. So thank you.
I so wish Rinpoche were here, but he is here in his recordings and his books.
Yeah, I would say, actually, yeah, that even though I never met Chogyam Trungpa, I began to feel more and more of a connection with him of a sort as time went on. And I especially remember, and I think I told this to some people, but the first solitary retreat I did, I was sitting there in this cabin. And for those of you who may not have done this, solitary retreat means you're in a cabin and you meditate. That's it. Well, different kinds of practices can be done, but there's no other activities. You don't come and go. You're just there. And my first retreat, I did 2 weeks in this cabin and just meditating every waking hour. And the cabin was set up with a shrine there, and there was a picture of the Sakyong, and then there was a picture of Chogyam Trungpa, amongst other things. And after a while, I would glance up at that picture of Chogyam Trungpa, and I just felt like he was laughing. He was looking at me going, look at this guy. He's trying so hard to do it right. And it was just that it was, this is all in my own mind, but it just felt so real. There's great compassion there. Like, oh man, look at this guy. Trying so hard to be a good meditator. And so I came away from that feeling a much stronger connection with him.
Who else? Kyle.
Hello, thank you for your teachings, and this is all very timely, and I really enjoyed hearing the talks today. We kind of just read through the book, but I didn't have a chance to read these chapters yet on my own, so I'm kind of glad we went over it together, and it was cool. I just have I have a few technical questions, but I guess some of them I definitely had relating to the end of the Buddha chapter. Buddha does not dwell in nirvana, but he abides in ultimate perfection. And my question is, what's the difference? The Four Noble Truths talk about the truth of suffering, the root of suffering, and then there's liberation from suffering, how to get there. And as far as I remember, I don't know, nirvana is freedom from suffering. But quite early on in this book, he says, you're never trying to get to nirvana. You never transcend suffering. You never transcend pain. And Buddha doesn't abide in the freedom from pain. Buddha abides in reality. And I guess, what's the difference? I don't know. I'm just confused.
At the beginning stage of the path, the motivation is you want to find freedom from the suffering in your mind and your body. Same reason you might go to a psychotherapist. You want freedom from unhappiness. And this is the first motivation for coming to the path. But as the path progresses, as you progress along the path, through the stages of the path, especially into the Mahayana and especially into the Vajrayana, you realize that the very attempt to escape pain is the fundamental mechanism of pain itself. And you give that up and instead come back to simple, clear awareness of life as it unfolds now. That life contains pain because our bodies get old and die and all kinds of things happen, right? Loved ones disappear, there's loss.
Mm.
But the neurotic pain of ego, which is always wishing that things were different, that goes. That disappears as the person becomes more and more sane. And so as that disappears, the desire for nirvana disappears as well. Nirvana is some kind of heaven, right? Some kind of blissful freedom from pain and maybe even pleasure. But that goes because one is dwelling more and more in the present moment. You still will have the pains of breaking your leg or getting old and watching your body fall apart, losing loved ones. But it's not, you've given up the pain of wishing things were otherwise, which is the desire for nirvana. And so it says in the lineage chant, samsara, realizing that samsara and nirvana are one, meaning it's just this world. We come back to this again and again and work with this. Live it fully, intelligently, but without hopes and fears and preconceptions, aversions,
Yeah.
That makes sense?
No, thank you. I guess like what I kind of take, I mean, yeah, I really appreciate you like explaining it. I guess like kind of like what I'm thinking is like liberation from suffering does exist. That's kind of like in the Four Noble Truths, but it doesn't exactly look the way we think it does. And as we progress, it gets more nuanced and, oh, the root of suffering is trying to avoid suffering. And then it becomes trying to avoid suffering. And like, it just keeps going and becomes nuanced and it always falls back on itself and leaves us nowhere. And I don't know, but I find it kind of trustworthy that it's hard to pinpoint or describe exactly.
I think that the further one goes on the path, the more fully and intensely one is living one's life. And this includes both the pleasures and the pains of life. And you're not trying to go to one side and leave the other. You're just here dealing with what needs to be dealt with. And also you're inspired by the two main principles of clear seeing things as they are, and within that, compassion. Love of others rouses itself in your life more and more as you give up this personal, selfish, self-centered desire for some kind of release. And as you give that up, there's more and more room for the appreciation of others and acts of generosity and that just come naturally. They say that the further one goes on the path, there's bliss. That bliss comes from love of life, love of others, that blossoms in one's heart when one gives up selfishness.
Mm.
But very naturally. Philip, you have your hand up.
Oh, thanks, and thanks for the teachings, and Barry as well. So, to you, Kyle, an illustration I came across recently about samsara and nirvana, how could they possibly be the same? It's because neither one really exists in its own right any more than the concept of left and right exist in their own right. You can't have a right unless you have a left, and you can't have a left unless you have a right. neither one exists by itself. And I think samsara and nirvana have that same kind of relationship. It's not like you're traveling from one to the other.
I agree. Yeah, they're mental constructs. Well, it's almost time. I think we can have one more question, comment, complaint.
I found that definition if you want to hear it. Oh, no, go ahead, Robert. You have something.
Oh, sure. I'll just be quick. I was thinking about Sarah's question about whether a Sangha requires a teacher. And I was thinking if we broaden the definition of what teacher is, one can create a Sangha in almost unique conditions. Because we were talking a couple of days ago, and I was looking through my notes, and Philip was my teacher, and Meg was my teacher, and John's always my teacher, and then Barry, you were my teacher. So if we have a group of people together that are sharing our insights and knowledge, we're all teachers. And I find that so enriching. So, it's not just one person, but a group all, I think, bringing those unique perspectives, and we can help take each other down the path together.
And
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And there are different levels of teachers. There's the Hinayana level, where the teacher is the font of information and an example of some kind. There's the Mahayana level, where the teacher at the Mahayana level is called a spiritual friend, a Kalyana Mitra. And they have really understood something profound, like the truth of emptiness, lack of existence of I and other, to some degree. And this has produced warmth and compassion and clear seeing in them. And then at the Vajrayana level, the teacher becomes really powerful and fierce. It can be. And the communicator of enlightenment itself. So it's hard, you can't really, it's hard to pick what teacher, what individual is embodying what level of teacher, but all those levels definitely are at play. Definitely. I had a friend in the Sangha, he passed. His name was Kobanchino Sensei when I knew him first. Then he became a Roshi. He was a Soto Zen person. And he was a wonderful guy. He was, I think in retrospect, a real Kalyana Mitra, Mahayana level of the path. And my wife at the time and I had a place up in the mountains where we used to go skiing. And I took Koban up there. I've told this story before, so if you've heard it, forgive me. But he wasn't a very good skier, but he was fearless. He would go straight down the mountain with his arms out like this. I call it kamikaze skiing. and he was just a delightful human being. And one night we were having a drink or something. We were talking in the place where we were staying, and over the table. And I said to him, Koban, I don't feel like I'm doing enough for other people. I said, look at the example of someone like Mother Teresa, who just lives her life, in service, utter service to others. And I said, maybe I ought to go and leave this life that I'm living, because I was living a pretty nice life, with money and the Sangha and all that, and do something more extreme, to benefit others. And he looked at me, and we're sitting at this table, and he says, a bodhisattva is a person who finishes the conversation with the person sitting across the table. That was a huge teaching for me. It's like you don't follow some kind of conceptual dream of making yourself into something better. What you do is you respond to the exigencies, the demands, the requirements, and the communications that present themselves to you in the life that you've got as it evolves. You behave appropriately, openly, and intelligently. That's what he was telling me. Koban was a wonderful guy. I can tell you all stories about him. He was a very eccentric person.
Well,
It's time to end.
I can put up the chants if you want.
Okay, go ahead.
Here they come.
We'll mute all, right?
Oh, yes. Oops. How do I do that with?
I can do it.
Okay.
Now who's going to lead? Barry?
Okay.
So unmute. Unmute yourself.
Okay. We'll get it together. We'll close with a prayer for peace and dedicating the merit. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times, and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, and epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world. And may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigda's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Wonderful to see
Thanks,
you.
Barry.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Barry.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Have a great evening.
Kyle, when do you take refuge?
When? Sunday at 3:30.
Oh, okay. So you haven't gotten your refuge name yet.
No, I get it on Sunday.
Ah,
All right. Well, next time you sign in, you should put it there in your
yeah.
name.
Change it. You could if you like, but I'm really
Oh,
interested.
but what if I sign in tomorrow? Yeah, no, I will. After I get it, maybe I'll have to come back.
I should start putting mine back up there. All right. See you later.
Get a name? How cool is that?
Oh,
Is that
I
a-
know. I'm so
Oh,
excited.
yeah.
you don't know about that?
No, I thought it was just a recital of
Mm-mm.
Oh,
No, every
Oh
time
no.
you take initiation in Buddhism, you get a new name. Now, the only one you're allowed to use is your refuge name. So Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, his refuge name was Chogyam. It's actually Chukyi Gyamtso, abbreviated into Chogyam. And that's what he went by most of the time. And but then when you take the Bodhisattva vow, you will get a Bodhisattva name. And you can only share that with other people who have taken the Bodhisattva name. And then when you take tantric initiation, you will get a name every time. You know, given by the teacher. Wow.
I happen to have here my certificate that I got for my refuge.
Oh, look at that.
And this is my refuge name in upside down, excuse me. And it says Sangye Tenfil. That's my name.
Which means?
Sangye is a synonym for enlightened one, Buddha.
Right.
And Tenfil, she translated it as awakened one who propagates the Dharma. It was also the name of the third Trungpa, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, my refuge name is Shiwa Chudzin. I could go by that, and there are people who do go by their refuge names, actually. Not very many, but they're around. My name is Shiwa Chudzin, means peaceful Dharma holder. And there's a story behind that that's kind of funny, but I won't go into it now. And then perhaps if you've come and you've seen someone who calls himself Lodro Jinpa, that's his name is Alejandro, and he's going by his refuge name.
Oh.
It becomes a reminder, you see, of your potential.
Yeah.
Your sanity.
We also have someone who joins who uses Tarpa.
That's right.
It's Karen Sue. That's her name.
Uses Tarpa Children, which means the Dharma Torch of Liberation. Uses her refuge.
And here I thought it was only monks that got refuge names.
Oh no. Oh no. If you take refuge, you'll get a refuge name.
I
Kyle's going to get one.
can imagine.
We're really, I'm looking forward to hearing what yours is, Kyle.
That's great.
Thank you, John. No, it's so great I tuned in. I almost didn't today because I was late and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this or whatever. And then I logged on. I'm like, I'm so glad I did. Like, we're talking about refuge the week I'm taking refuge. How could I not log on this week?
Right? The Buddhas were watching.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I have one more question if you don't mind entertaining me for a bit.
Go ahead.
We're talking about like the Buddha as the example today, and we're talking about enlightenment's not the same as nirvana, and in the same spect, Buddha is not God. We do not worship Buddha, but like especially as you get to Vajrayana, you're supposed to see his guru as perfect as far as I understand. Susan's teacher, Sam Berkhold. Do you know Sam Berkhold?
Sure, I know very well.
Yeah, he just gave us, or a lot of us, the Open Heart Project, the lung to do rain of blessings. So of course I'm thinking all about what it's like to visualize, Padmasambhava and what it means to do the mantra and the 7-line supplication. And I bought commentaries, I haven't read yet, but part of what I'm wondering is what's the difference between doing these visualizations, having complete devotion in the guru and a religious, God like orientation. I guess like what's the distinction?
These things that you're visualizing represent, you might say, the sane or enlightened qualities of your own mind. They're not external. Nothing in Buddhism is external. There are no external deities. There are not even external people. It's like nothing exists internally or externally. But these are aspects of your mind. And what you're visualizing is symbolic representations of that.
Yeah, it could be confusing because we say, grant your blessings so that my mind may be one with the Dharma. Well, who are we asking to grant blessings?
And whose mind? Yeah. But language is dualistic, and so we're stuck with it. And when you say it, so that my mind may be one with the Dharma, basically, so that I realize egolessness, the lack of self, the truth of the teachings. That's the constant conundrum in Buddhism. And this whole issue of nirvana versus samsara, what you're proceeding to is a more and more vivid and heartfelt and powerful experience of this world. And that vividness and power and heartfeltness and magic. I mean, this world is magical, that all these appearances and phenomena arise and pass away. And then the issue of samsara and nirvana just fades. Pain doesn't go away. There's still